So today we're here at the Grand Prix circuit because I just took first place in the Bionic League yet again, although by only a very slim margin this time. They're making me work for it. Anyways, I'm here to show off some of my Bionic vehicles, and maybe even show you how to build some. So here's a basic rotary Bionic engine, and as you can see, it's kind of just a lot of servos and some fins, but all the servos do different things that are kind of important. We've got our main drive, this stack of 5 here, and they're set to an angle of infinity and max speed, and hold position as well. And they're what provides the actual spinning force. Then we've got the ones that angle our blades. I've just got it at an angle of 18 for demonstration right now. It doesn't really matter the speed, and there's no controls. And they're just activated by a NOR gate, so they're constantly on. And then we have a kind of a free-floating bearing here. This one is at 0 strength, so it doesn't provide any extra force or interfere with the spinning of these. It just provides an anchor point to keep this whole assembly stable, because instability is your enemy in these Bionic engines. There's a thing called Bionic engine breakdown, where after a few seconds to a minute your engine might just tear itself into pieces unexpectedly. And that's the struggle of designing these. There's a lot of testing and failures until you get it right. But as you can see, it's basically a turbine without an enclosure, or like a high-speed fan of sorts. And that's what propels these cars to hundreds of miles an hour. Well, not that one. That one goes hundreds of miles an hour. But we'll get to those in a minute. Is there anything else to say about this? Actually, let's get right to them. So this here is the Mark 24, I believe. So it's not exactly my earliest model, but it's the earliest model of the Bionic race car that I still have saved. And as you can see, it has a lot of downforce, and that's because these engines provide a lot of force and have to be mounted up high to not scrape the road. And I still had a smaller wheelbase here. But this one's not too intense, although it's a little goofy. It still goes pretty darn fast. We're going 240, so it still goes hundreds, I suppose. But yeah, 0 power cores. It's just this stack of servos providing the force. The blades on this one are a little bit more finely tuned. They're balanced out to 17.5, so it's probably where the acceleration and the top speed balanced out. And then this one back here is still at a strength of 0, because it's just the, I would call it a single stack engine. The other one has a double stack engine. I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, if you're in a more stable vehicle, they have reverse, but this one, as you can see, doesn't quite like reversing. Let's go back and check out some other ones. Well, I was going to show you that one, but it just crumbled to dust, so one moment. Okay, so yeah, that one I just showed you was the Mark 24. The next most recent one, or the next oldest one I have saved, is the Mark 32. And as you can see, it's evolved a little bit, but it's still pretty similar. The car is still made of spoilers, mostly. It's still a 5-stack, 5-stack single, so 5 drive servos, and then a free-floating one on the backside. But we've replaced one of our simple tail fins with a big elevator fin, and that was just through some experimentation that it provides a little bit more force because it's bigger and it weighs less, so it lets it spin a little bit easier, I think. Although it does introduce some instability into the mix because when it's spinning really fast, this joint I think flexes a little bit because it's it's an elevator fin. It's meant to move, and even if it's still set at full strength, it still sets to full strength, I think it still flexes a little bit, and whether that helps or hurts it, I'm not sure, but the overall effect was a benefit, so I kept it. And let's see, the only other difference here is the angle's down to 17. So it's just a lot of tweaking over time to the vehicle in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to bother waiting for that. And oh, this one's a little bit harder to control. The steering's a little bit twitchier and it's going faster, I believe. So actually, let me just bring this over to the drag strip. I'm just going to do some comparisons as I go through these quick. Yeah, so it's going to 70, 80, 90, it almost gets up to 300, so we are getting better. 300's not too bad, but we had to get a lot faster than that to keep our records. So that was the Mark 32, and we're still in the old era from before the last leaderboard reset. And here's the Mark 36, which is starting to look more familiar. And that might be because you just saw its ghost over in this race here. If I'm not mistaken, this is the one that still holds my sprint record, because this one is a 6-servo stack, and it's a double stack. So it has drive servos on both sides of the assembly. And it has more surface area on its turbine blades. So overall, this one goes significantly faster. But it does have some downsides. Oh, like jumping the gun. The main downside is instability. It'll tear itself apart in any race much longer than the drag strip, and I'll show you that in a second. But first, yeah, 513 miles an hour this thing goes. Unfortunately, if we take it somewhere with a little bit more room to stretch its legs, okay, oh, there it is. See, we weren't even on the track anymore, so there wasn't even any bumpiness or turbulence, and the engine still tore itself to pieces within about 10 seconds. And that's what's called Bionic engine breakdown. And that's why it's the fastest vehicle that I have with Bionic engines, but it's never won the Grand Prix, because it simply can't survive on the track long enough. So moving on from that one, kind of a one-off drag strip master, I'm going to skip the Mark 40 because that's basically the same thing I just showed you, except it was it's a 5-stack. So it only has 5 servos on each side instead of 6, which makes it a lot more stable but a little bit slower. But the Mark 41 here is when I started doing both the turbines in line with each other, which saves aerodynamics a little bit, and also makes the car not so chunky. It doesn't take up the entire roadway anymore, but it still is pretty wide in order to stay stable. And you can see the acceleration on this version is very good, but it only goes about... I'll let that finish. The acceleration is very good, but it only goes about 300 miles an hour, and that served me really well in the races because of all the tight corners and having to re-accelerate all the time after each one. So top speed isn't everything in the Grand Prix race. But speaking of the Grand Prix, I'm not sure if I can drive this one without assistance, so it might be time to tell you about my tricks soon. Oh no, I can still mostly keep this on the track. As people often like to point out, I'm ignoring racing lines. Oh. And I wasn't able to rotate my camera fast enough there, which is one of the problems I started encountering with these. And why I had to start driving in first person for a lot of my races. Oop. And I clicked the side. I'm not quite locked into the racing mindset right now, I'm more in the talkative mindset, so I'm not going to worry about perfecting a race in front of you right now. And so now we're moving on to the ones that I've built after the leaderboards reset with Pioneers. So I've got the Mark 42, which is very similar to the last one. So I'm not sure I'm going to pull it out. It's just a little bit more optimized, but it's still a 5x5 engine. 5 in the front, 5 in the back. And it's set to an angle of 18, which means it's a little bit more towards acceleration than top speed, if I'm not mistaken. I believe 17 is right about balanced for this engine, in particular. But it varies by engine, so don't take my word for it. Then the Mark 43 is a 6-stack, but it's the Mark 43B variant that I actually won the race with, so that's the one I'm going to pull out. And I'm also going to have to show you my little secret here, which you might get a preview of off to the side here. We've got giant bricks of magnets. What could those possibly be used for? You'll have to see in a second. But yeah. I'll try my best to run this race in normal speed. And I'm not gonna get far. So the way that I had to start doing it was by literally slowing down the time of the game a little bit. And you do that with magnets. If I just load this up here, this big old slab of magnets. Now I don't mind doing this for the races because it was another racer who showed me this trick. And it's fair game in my book. Now what happens when you turn on all the magnets is it more or less has to check each magnet to see if there's something in front of it to grab. And because there's so many checks to do every second, it slows down the speed of the game, like the frame rate of the game, but it does so in a very predictable and stable way. So it's a very, very stable method of getting a laggy game. And what that basically does is it's a time machine. It makes time go slower. You can see how slow the countdown's going now. And we're still traveling at the same speed. Our servos, like our turning servos and everything, they all move at the same rate. So it's still very fair, but your reaction time is boosted because time is slowed by, I would say, a little more than half. So you can still see I'm ignoring racing lines and struggling to stay on the track at points. But that's because this thing is getting well over 400 miles an hour on the straightaways. And if you look at my little speedometer, you can see a crack in it, and that's because this one still has some of the Bionic engine breakdown. Most races, it does not last. It usually starts to explode right around here, actually. And I also normally crash by now, so I'm doing pretty good. Especially for being on camera. I would have thought that would have made me more nervous. There it is. Didn't make that turn. I hear my car somewhere doing terrible things. But I can't see where it went. Oh, there it is. Oh, the poor thing. Anyways, we're still in slow-mo, so let's respawn. And yeah, so this final version, well, it's not going to be the final version. I'm sure someone's going to beat me and I'll have to make an even faster one. But this is a 6x6 stack. And it's really pushing the limits of the stability of the engine. Like, it took many hours of tinkering before I could finally make it survive a race without exploding. So feel free to try to copy it off site. A lot of things matter, down to the shape and size of the vehicle and its drag profiles and all of that, and any little rattling or instability will tear the engine right apart. So I encourage you to try, honestly. I welcome the competition, it's fun. And I recommend build light and avoid as much aerodynamics as possible. So if I open this up in aerodynamics, you can see we've got all real nice green arrows and everything, even our turning servos, because yes, this has aerodynamic turning, not just wheel turning. And the reason I use these chrome bumpers so much is because as an accessory piece, like most accessories, they don't have any drag on them. They're basically, the wind goes straight through them without applying any force, so a little sneaky, but they're a valid part. A lot of people use them. Grid blocks are very light, and these rear wing spoilers, in addition to providing some downforce when you're making a turn, are extremely light for their volume. So when you only need to connect something end to end, or top to bottom and end, using these spoilers in your car is actually really clever. I say, tooting my own horn. Anyways, I think that about wraps it up. And like I said, I didn't beat him by much. Only about a tenth of a second there. Not even. That's 0.07. 0.07 seconds I'm only ahead of him by. When he sees that, he's gonna beat me in no time at all again. Which means I need to develop a faster car. And I might save actually building it for another video, because that would be pretty cool, I think. If you want to see me build one of these from scratch, let me know. Anyways, I think that's gonna do it for me. Bye-bye now.